Hello and welcome back. So today we will be talking about why it's important to be self-explanatory towards the public eye, and we will be talking about the Civil Servant Conduct Article 3B from the Civil Servant Act of 1998, Section 2A. I didn't know else how to explain it, so I wrote it in an essay. What was I even on about? Oh yeah, last night I stated, I push people away because I want it to be easier for others to move on as if I'm gonna die by chance. Or I may take an alternative, physical course of action. I like to inform my social media platforms about my mental and emotional well-being. On purpose, I constantly share every spectrum, point of view, mental health, all former past trauma stories for a certain, specific, precise, ideal self-portrayal of representation in every reason in the most uttermost of sense. I overexpress myself for numerous amount of reasons. 1. Common alternative predictions. I share far too much. Oneself would say that's hardly the point of view or standpoint I'm thoughtfully manifesting. It's imperative to be predictable. If I express and represent myself towards others in the very image I'm deliberately trying to convince, that hostile self-narration and opinionated overall perspective of others, I could make any drastic course of action afar from what others would commonly predict what my next move is. Or would, or could, or should be. There's a lot of self-grief and personal remarks, statements, phrases, verbal definitions of self-growth, upbringings, stories, memories, opinions, and personal characteristic verbal reflection trait explanations, because I'm forming expectancy. I'm developing predictable behavior, because no one truly knows my main real intentions. I'm becoming commonly known so I can make alternative future course of actions afar from a moderate stance of basic civil predictions. 2. Portray yourself and act odd and point out positive. Portray yourself and act odd to point out positive needed allies in search of locating well-minded people for sufficient required self-growth. I overexpress false sadness and depression because being seen as weak or vulnerable can benefit a person. If a person seems to be distraught or lost in a reminiscing kinder past that is longed for, people would automatically think less of the person by default. It's human nature to urge oneself to be around strong, well-put-together individuals, to thrive and succeed. If a person exists with weak-minded people, that individual wouldn't benefit and would grow unhealthy off of the other person. The individual wouldn't benefit and would grow on an off-minded slate. Imagine a burning giant at the center of our solar system. A star, person, requires stability within its own gravity, balance of inner amount of sufficient well-minded people. The star, the person, would perish due to the lack of hydrogen, the lack of well-minded people in spheres of influence. The lack of proper-minded mindsets in peer development states can be lost, and under pressure, the core, the person, would begin to collapse. I portray myself in a sad manner sometimes for a valid reason. It's for the ideal acknowledgement of who is more or less the person that is expressing the self-betrayal at the certain manner and the way an individual does. If it's confirmed you have an ally, or an admirer of another. It's more category rather than being deemed to be less in the eyes of another. Having the opportunity to be compared or considered, or to be comparable in a comprehensive understanding of others, is the grand second step. Now oneself conform thyself with well-minded individuals. I want you all to pay close attention to this next statement. Everything you have in your life exists in your life because you brought it into your life by your own interests. There's this book called The Secret. It stated, everything you ever said or did in the past led to where you are now, in this current exact moment in time. Conclusion. If you act a certain way to point out a variety of necessary adversaries, whom can and will benefit in a two-way street, and will form a well-minded exchange of pure self-growth. This next example matters with the uttermost sincere, straightforward, moderate sense of clarity. Inform and imply reassurance towards others of your moral life, objectives and natural natures of harmless intentions can affect all individuals abroad of the party. Okay, now let me summarize that. It's important to be predictable because you could do something drastic in the future and people won't expect what you're going to do. My second point, it's important to be in different states of emotion towards the public eye, so you can point out and pinpoint who sees you in a specific way, manner, or demeanor. So you could categorize those people on who will be beneficial and who you could put aside and view less of, because they already see you less based upon how you represented yourself towards that person and the nature of how you deemed your self-betrayal. And my third point, The Secrets. It's a book. The Law of Attraction. Everything you have in your life because you brought it here by your past actions. Everything you ever said or did in the past led to where you are now. Okay, now that was my little essay for why it's best to be over-explanative towards the public eye. 1, be predictable, so you could make drastic decisions without being guessed what you're going to do. 2, act certain ways towards the public eye so you could categorize certain people and how they view you, so you could point out who will be needed and who will be categorized into a subtopic that is not going to be very sufficient towards your self-growth. And 3, everything you have in your life because you brought it there by your own interests, values, point of views. Basically anything that you did in your past led to where you are now. So we have no one to blame what's wrong in our lives but ourselves. Okay, I'm done with that part. Now this one is the civil servant conduct. If a person wants to be a role model or a public figure that would be comparable towards others, that would make the person memorable and fond in the eyes of those whom have graced the individual with the attentive admiration and visual interests. If you know me well, you would know I'm devoted towards the head of state, and my loyalty aligns with the Commonwealth. I also have a great ordeal of respect towards government and all forms of public servants. So, my friend, this is a little story, I shouldn't say. So, the Lacombe Police Department, they set me under a detention. And 3 months prior, I was doing a civil servant inquiry with them, but they didn't get back to me until way after. I was put in cuffs and I was placed in the back of the Lacombe police cruiser. Back in September, I gave the police station a call asking if I could familiarize and interview a local police officer that could represent this district under the Civil Servant Bylaw Act of 1989. I was ignored, and after my release, my interest in adding Lacombe to the Joint Committee will temporarily be held on hold until the next annual Civil Servant Inquiry. So far, Red Deer, Ponoka, Penhold, High River, Edmonton, Calgary, Edson, Golden, Fort McMurray, and Grand Prairie have been granted approval for Alberta's Joint Session Committee. So it's 10 out of 13. Assigned districts have been approved. 3 of them, including Lacombe, have been void. In Alberta, those that have been approved have been granted towards the Joint Committee. The following cities are void within this provincial annual civil servant inquiry assessment until next year's familiarized assessment interview representative request. I've contacted HQ in Quebec and notified representatives alongside civil servant colleagues, representatives in SK, BC, Manitoba, and Prince Edward Island. And most and foremost, I've decided to break protocol. I'm going to inform Lacombe County Police Department that they won't be involved and informed about this year's Civil Servant Joint Committee. I hence uphold Lacombe's Joint Committee referral void under my code 687-394-AB 2023, confirming District 32B void alongside Sherwood Parks, Brooks County. Commissioner Skinner upholds Nunavut and Montreal left to evaluate this year's Joint Committee. Sincerely, 687-394-AB 2023. And I just shared stuff I wasn't supposed to. Sue me.